Alright, welcome back to Terra Invicta, and you might be wondering, hey, Perun, I thought you said you were going to go to war with the aliens. Why are you staging a coup in Uzbekistan? Firstly, what a silly question. We have Max on our roster, of course we're going to stage a coup in Uzbekistan. The answer is because we have decided to go to war. At the same time as the validation branch patches, so one patch ahead of the public release, has decided to change a few things. The first is that my battle stations now have half their firepower. Under the previous rules, your battle stations would mount your best laser, your best cannon, so your best like mag rail or coil gun or whatever, and your best point defense. The way I got around this was not researching any guns, and so it would default to mounting two of my best lasers, which is why I only had to go down the laser tree and got two 360cm ultraviolet phasers. Those are the best lasers in the game, and I got two of them. Now I get one and a shitty naval cannon until I can research some coil guns. So, as you can imagine, coil guns are researching as quickly as possible. The second thing that's changed is they've loosened the restrictions on mission control a little bit in terms of how much you can build without frenzying the aliens. So that's exactly what I've done. I've started building up my infrastructure because I now freely can do so. So we're only really going to go to war once it comes time to go over the new cap, which is about I think 260 is the hard cap, 250 is the soft cap, and what that means right now is we need to build up a whole bunch of facilities, which is convenient because it now lets us actually start answering some of the key questions in terms of resources. What do we need in order to fight a war in space? And I'm going to define this in terms of resources, in terms of infrastructure, and in terms of technology. For resources, the big issue is clearly going to be volatiles. We have the smallest stockpile of it and the lowest income. So upgrading a lot of our facilities to level 3 in order to make them defensible will also allow us to increase volatile income and also, importantly, reduce volatile expenditure. One of the great buildings that you only unlock later on. Let's see if, yes, it does. So this is TLEO5R. It's got 4 battle stations, some shipyards. It's going to have another battle station, and it's going to be one of our more fortified stations. We're going to have 2 quintuple battle station arrays in orbit. And what it has are these things, agricultural complexes. At the moment, this station uses 0 water and 0 volatiles. If I shut down this agricultural facility, it now uses 17 and 43. If I shut down the second one, it uses 104 and 32. These things are far more efficient than mines. It is more efficient to reduce your upkeep of these resources to 0 than it is to mine more. The Tech 2 farm is pretty crap. It generates the same water and volatiles in terms of reduced income as about 250 crewmen. Agricultural complexes still only take 1 spot, but that number is now 3,000 crew. They're more than 11 times more effective, which is one of the big reasons that tier 3 stations and mines are so economically efficient. They've got a lot of heavy, expensive buildings, and we're researching more heavy, expensive buildings. So I'm going to get heavy fusion reactor farms, which do the job of almost 2 fusion reactors, but for 1 slot rather than 2. But they're very expensive and they're slow to build. So you get all these very slot-efficient, heavy, expensive facilities. Agriculture complexes help you essentially reduce the load. So getting these produced in as many upgraded stations as possible should help solve, for now, the volatiles and water problem. To solve it more permanently, we're going to eventually have to go to Jupiter. So that's resource requirement 1, getting all these stations upgraded and getting their agricultural facilities in place. And because the second problem we're going to have is mission control, it takes a long time to build in orbit and it's expensive. So we will get more of it online, but it will be expensive. It'll drain our resources while it's constructing. Getting a little more Earth-based mission control sounds like a good idea. So Uzbekistan with its 6 mission control, and then initiative control Tajikistan with its 6 mission control, and then we'll see where we go from there. But it's time for Eurasia to grow slightly larger. We've been pretty passive on the map deliberately. Time to just get a little bit of value for money. In terms of defensibility of space assets, that means coil guns, and it means upgrading from layer defense arrays to battle stations on tier 3s around the place. It also means building facilities like space. Let's rename this. This is a default name. I don't want the default name. This will be Space Adelaide. This will be Space Adelaide. Space Adelaide's job is to be the most heavily defended shipyard ever built by humans. It'll be 5 battle stations, I think. There might be a sixth one around here somewhere, I can't remember the exact design, with an array of 6 shipyards. The battle stations are also all clumped together, so hopefully their point defenses should be mutually supporting. This is what the aliens will have to break through in order to deny us the ability to build ships in low Earth orbit. The biggest risk to move away from, so that's resources. Resources are, we need to go to level 3, we need to build more mission control, and also become more efficient, and then free up mission control to go from level 1 mines, which are very efficient, to level 3 mines, which are less efficient for MC, but produce a crap ton more resources. So that's resource requirements. In terms of military requirements, we need to be able to secure Mars, Mercury, the Earth, and maybe defend some of our asteroids, at least from small alien fleets. That means fortified infrastructure, but it's the biggest problem around Earth because in Earth we have alien mega fleets tending to drop by. Small fleets like these are not so much of a problem. Big ones including motherships, if we just go show all fleets, this 8.2 strength here in low Earth orbit is a good example. It includes 2 motherships. So what do we see if we look at a mothership? Firstly, we see 55,000 tons of pain. Like, this thing is an absolute monster. But in terms of weapon systems and armor, it also presents a unique problem. For one thing, the alien heavy plasma cannon and the alien heavy plasma battery. These are a problem for 2 reasons. The first is that the targeting range of 1,200 kilometers is just longer, outright longer, than most of our phaser weapons. So this thing is going to engage our ships and even our stations, unless we can get some longer range weapons mounted on them, from beyond their range. It's a standoff weapon. The second problem is because it's a plasma weapon, it can't be intercepted by point defense. The characteristics of plasma weapons in Terra and Invicta is that they don't have the same damage output as things like mag rail systems, and they don't have the automatic hit capability of things like lasers, but they cannot be intercepted by point defense. They're balls of coherent gas, which obviously doesn't particularly care if you shoot a laser beam at it. So, the motherships are a serious problem for any fleets or defences. Now, normally the counter I would propose to things like a mothership is you nuke it, quite literally. We'd get advanced missile doctrine, we'd unlock some nukes, or we'd just missile spam the damn thing to death with as many missile tubes as we could possibly find. It's got some point defense, got a reasonable amount of point defense, a particle beam, and also these lasers can be used in self-defense. The problem is, this thing is in a fleet. 2 motherships together with a whole bunch of other ships gives it enough point defense that nuking it is not a readily available option. It's got a lot of firepower and an awful lot of armor, 78 centimeters of alien exotic armor. So it's a problem. But it also has a weakness, and the weakness is its delta V. Unlike the other alien ships that have like 600, 700, 800 delta V, even alien technology reaches its limits when it's asked to move 55,000 tons of metal through space, which means that by the time it gets to Earth, it's down to 160 kps already. Getting this thing to move between Earth orbits is going to run this number down because it still needs enough kps to make it back to its original refueling station, or it's going to be stranded. So what including motherships does is make an alien fleet far, far, far harder for us to engage head-on, but at the same time reduces its strategic mobility. So once we start fighting, at least initially, I'm probably going to try and distract this thing with stations in extreme high and mid-Earth orbit, keep it dancing around, run down its fuel supplies, and then buy myself a couple of months when it decides to fly home to refuel and then fly back again. That's the basic plan, because right now I don't have anything that can kill the bloody thing. So limiting its strategic mobility is probably the best we can do. For other alien fleets, we'll try and pinch them off. Eventually we'll build a couple of ships that can go around and hunt small alien groups, but I don't see a counter to the mothership immediately in my future, as long as there's a pair of them in this 8K fleet. So in terms of resources, we're going to need a couple of things. Ground-based mission control I've talked about. Eliminating the ability of our enemies like the Servants and the Protectorate to be a problem, that's going to be difficult going forward and requires us to consolidate and protect as much of the Earth as possible. That means both controlling it and also building anti-orbital defenses, something which we are actively doing. One thing I'm already thinking about is how do I use great nations in order to expand my territorial footprint without going over my CP cap limit. One thing I'm actually thinking about is using the UK. The UK has currently built all the MC it can, 20 of it, which means it's going to become less useful if we can't expand it. One thing I'm considering doing is getting the restoration of the Commonwealth technology so that the UK, not the US, can absorb Canada, as well as South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. That would give the UK a lot of additional territory that it could build defences and MC in, and eventually, if we're feeling particularly brave, what we could do is then rejoin that expanded Commonwealth UK into the European Union, unify it with the European Union, bringing the Commonwealth and the EU together, and then eat the EU with the Eurasian Union, or the other way around, thus creating a superstate that spans, hypothetically, from Vladivostok to Tasmania to Western Canada. But again, that's just a vague thought on the possibilities that are out there. Finally, in terms of space infrastructure, it's the combination of defensibility, reduced volatile and water upkeep through the use of agricultural facilities, and then, once the initial round of upgrades is complete, looking at investing in Tier 3 mining technology. A number of my bases won't be able to support it initially, but once I add heavy fusion reactors with a little bit of re-engineering, I should be able to massively increase production of nobles and base metals. This is going to go down anyway as more nanofactories finish, so increasing production across the board is probably utterly necessary, and that's what my big build is going to try and accomplish. Technology-wise, drives, weapons, we'll talk about them as they unlock in more detail. I've been talking for long enough, so let me roll on with the plan. In terms of technology, Hydron Trap gives a 50% bonus to the exhaust velocity of any engine that uses hydrogen as a propellant, and we will be bringing in a number of engines that use hydrogen as a propellant. This is a relatively light, relatively cheap module that, as long as you give it a utility slot, can make the engine much more efficient. So very, very happy to have it. Z-Pinch Fusion Reactor 3 is one of the last components we need to get to the reactor that I'm actually going to use for most of at least the next initial stage of the game. Eventually, going up inertial confinement and antimatter is a good idea to get the most optimal engine choices for the later stages of the fight. But the first stages of the war I intend to fight with something called the flow-stabilized Z-Pinch Fusion Reactor, something that requires us to get level 3 Z-Pinch Fusion first to unlock the reactor that we want. Once we get the flow-stabilized reactor, I'll show you the engine that I'm aiming for that should give us our first generation of true interplanetary warships. Now, before we go to war with Uzbekistan, a quick example of how I will upgrade my stations initially. This is a tech level 2 station out on an asteroid that's now been upgraded to level 3. I'm not going to fill all of the building slots straight away. I don't have the economy or resources to support it. We're going to have to do a tiered, staged upgrading system. Basically, what we're going to do is upgrade the battle stations, the point defense arrays to the layered defense arrays to battle stations. We'll then turn them off to limit the upkeep. Then the next stage is to go to, this thing will need more power. So what we'll do is we'll go to fusion reactor farms. Once I unlock heavy fusion reactor farms, they will be used instead. But for the moment, this is what I work with. Eventually, we're going to replace these fusion reactors. But for now, at least, we can afford to do something like this. That'll provide enough initial support. Then we can add an agricultural facility here and upgrade this one to an agricultural facility there. This collectively is now a primarily upgraded station. It doesn't cost a huge amount in the basic stage. If we really want to, what we can do is add one command center and or one manufacturing complex. The manufacturing complex will speed up further constructions and offset the money cost. The command center helps offset the MC cost. So in this case, we will build one here. Note that we have to pay upgrading cost, or rather upkeep cost, on this structure up until the time it completes. So a relatively limited build like this means that when it finishes, it will have functional defenses which can be turned on and off. It will have 0 water and volatile upkeep, but at the same time, it won't bankrupt us in the interim. The excess power from the reactor farms means we can then safely replace the old infrastructure without shutting anything off in the meantime. That's the upgrade structure I'm going to broadly follow. I'm going to leave myself slots later on. These can become command centers or nanofactories or whatever. I just don't have the resources to support it right now. So I'm not sure if I'm actually going to use this project, but it is now at least done. I am also about to undertake heavy fusion reactors at absolute maximum priority because this is going to impact how I'm building my stations now. Nothing else gets finished until heavy fusion reactors are done on the 25th of November. Meanwhile, the Eurasian armies can go into Uzbekistan. You'll notice that the Eurasian army is now an information age force, tech level 4.1, plus it's getting +3 from our satellites in orbit. This means that the Eurasian forces are fighting at tech level 4.4. Essentially, Eurasia's armies are almost as good as America's armies were in 2022. That's not super impressive for this stage of the game, but it is a significant upgrade, and it does mean that Eurasia has the ability to fight its own wars. There's some American backup on the way, but it's not ultimately necessary. America's tech level near 7 effective armies are impressive, but Eurasia can at least pull its own weight with 1st Guards, 1st Panzer, 20th Guards, and 11th Armoured Cavalry. 1st Panzer obviously being here because when Germany was incorporated, its military spend was coupled with Eurasia's, and the division finished. So there you are, 1st Panzer Division fighting for the Eurasian Union. Tajikistan is next on the absorption radar. All the allies will join yet again. The initiative controls Tajikistan. They already hate my guts, and I have no hope of stopping them from hating my guts, so I'm not even going to bother damaging the country by cooing it first. The tanks will roll in after Uzbekistan and absorb it. More MC for me. Tashkent has fallen, and as a result, the Eurasian Union has absorbed another bout of MC, bringing it to 93. Tajikistan should bring the Eurasian Union close to 100 ground-based mission control. The best sort of mission control, the type that I don't have to pay hideous in-space upkeep costs for, or wait a year to be constructed. This is the good stuff right here. And here you can see the benefits of these massive agriculture complexes. A moment ago, I was negative on volatiles. The only thing that changed to put me now at +100 is that these two complexes finish. As a result, this base now has an upkeep of 10 water and 7.5 volatiles. Not really worth building another ag complex for. If I turn them off, you'll see that the total upkeep of the facility is 185 water and 182 volatiles per month through 2 modules. With a monthly support cost of 0.4 money, I can save myself literally hundreds of space resources. This is why these are the first things to get built, before basically everything else. Once I can afford the rest will come, but for now, it's about farming and battle stations. With those two things in place, we should be in a pretty good position. While this is somewhat unexpected, Vercingetorix base is a resistance facility which is obviously now offering to defect. Now, on one hand, this is a problem. This thing costs 7 MC to upkeep, which will push me up to 251, which, when you account for the fact I have some mines in construction, might be a problem. At the same time, it's going to instantly add 179 monthly volatile income. So I'm going to say welcome and then start overhauling the base. It's free real estate indeed. This looks like an asteroid base that is now going to be producing volatile income and probably putting us positive again. Let's have a quick look at the incomes. Yep, this is fine. Now, the base is kind of shit. It needs some overhaul work, but we can fix this. Leave this one with me. This is an unexpected addition, but given our volatile squeeze, a welcome one. I'm about to go buy a bunch of volatiles from other factions just to tide us over. My faith in Miss Iowade's abilities has been deeply shaken. She does have a lot of space resources, but she has no ability to do anything with them, so we're going to help her out a little bit. We're going to give her 2,000 water, I think, to balance out the ledger a little bit, but we're going to take some of her metals, her nobles, and her volatiles off her. We can use these for building in the here and now. We don't need all of the water, and we're probably going to stay positive. We're also going to give her some science and technology. That should make her happy, and I'm going to go through and check if she has any mining orgs quickly. None of these look like mining orgs. Nah, it doesn't seem so. I'm always on the lookout for more mining orgs. The more I can get bonuses there, the better. But that looks like all we're going to get today. Let's complete the trade. She will accept.
Offering assistance.
And that keeps us above 0 on our volatiles and allows us to continue building just that little bit more. In a couple of months, though, all our ag facilities should be finishing, and this shortage should be a thing of the past, although it will take a while for us to start building back up to full stocks. So the coil guns technology gives us two things. Firstly, an interesting quote from Chancellor Lee to give us some clue as to how she thinks and why she believes that they should engage with the aliens in the way they do. The second thing is it leads us on our way to cosplaying Halo by giving us access to the next generation of magnetic weapons. Importantly, coil guns are going to be what we use. Sorry, I've just come back to the save after a bit, so I need to reset this. Coil guns are going to give us what we need in order to access mag weapons for our defensive stations, which is one of the reasons why I didn't push immediately to go to war. I'm tempted to pick up space tourism quickly for 1,000, and then it's probably either integrated space economy or improved shipbuilding techniques. Improved shipbuilding techniques does lead us on the way to fleet logistics. So if we wanted to fly under the radar a little bit, we'd do improved shipbuilding techniques, fleet logistics, and then we get a technology that lets us build even more mission control without formally starting the war. It also unlocks a whole bunch of additional ship types, which is interesting. Integrated space economy, well, this is what we need. Again, if we're going to get to fleet logistics, both of them are important. Mission to Jupiter is a nice one to pick up in order to start sending probes, because we're going to need that eventually. So I'm kind of tempted to pick up space tourism for 1,000 just because it costs basically nothing. We'll have it finished in a couple of days, and then probably mission to Jupiter followed by Earth space economy. Is probably the order we're going to go. And in terms of projects, we're doing flow stabilized Z-pinch fusion reactor. This is going to be our reactor for the next stage of the game before we get some truly incredible stuff. Eventually, for example, we'll probably go inertial confinement and antimatter, but for the moment, flow stabilized Z-pinch, perfectly acceptable. We'll also need to research the advanced coil weapons so that they fit to our defense stations, and also so they're available for our ships, because if we're going to have to research coil guns for defensive purposes anyway, I can do some interesting things in terms of building some ship designs around them. A quick max special in Armenia sets us up for a likely referendum in the country, which is always handy. That'll add another 5 mission control to the 99 currently in the Eurasian Union. Exactly what we need. We've got a little bit of room in the CP cap anyway, so after this, we're currently doing mission to Jupiter, so we can start probing out there, because that'll take a while. We need to plan for the future. But we might actually want to start to get the ball rolling on independence movements, and as a result, the ability for us to expand the UK into other countries. The goal here is basically to consolidate as many locations as possible that could be controlled by the servants or the protectorate in the future, which means expanding our control over as much territory as possible, while also maximizing Earth ground-based MC, because it's cheaper than space-based MC and it can't be destroyed by the aliens. I am building a bunch of space-based MC, but the bigger the amount of float we can produce here, the faster our next stage of expansion can go. We've already gotten ourselves back positive on volatiles. The next step is to expand mining capacity for base metals and nobles. In particular, I think base metals are going to be one of the key gates going forward. You spend an awful lot of them. I'll buy what I can, but I do need to upgrade some mines as well. Having set one of those bases to upgrade though, it does put my income into the pits for the moment, because obviously the base is now not producing for the next 200 odd days. And here's more proof that and here's more proof that Mr. Banerjee here, the leader of the Protectorate, is really nihilistic and negative on human nature and capacity. He's talking at a conference about the proliferation of technology. It's used as a quote for inertial confinement fusion, which is an incredible technology that, if mastered, could have incredibly positive opportunities for humanity. And his main concern is, hey, humans will inevitably use it to destroy ourselves. Lots and lots of late-game Banerjee quotes basically convince me that Banerjee doesn't trust or like humans, which explains why he's willing to basically sell us out to the aliens. He doesn't expect or think we can do better. But I've only seen a couple of his quotes, so I can't be there for sure. In any case, inertial confinement fusion is now complete, which means we can pick up probably integrated Earth space economy is probably a nice next step. I don't think I need plasma weapons. Advanced missile warfare doctrine for nukes is definitely on the agenda, but I don't need to pick it up right now, so let's pick up integrated Earth space economy. We're doing heavy railgun batteries, the Z-pinch reactor. Hardened HAB shelters makes all of our off-Earth stuff more resilient to bombardment. feels like something that can't hurt, and we're nearly completed anyway. And mission to Jupiter is just so we can get the probes flying and save ourselves some time later on. You can't fly to a location with your spaceships if you haven't done the mission 2 tech, so I figured I might as well pick it up now. And we're completing referenda just like old times. Armenia is now incorporated into the Eurasian Union, which means we're now looking at a nice healthy 265 mission control limit before we complete any of the command centers that are in queue in orbit. Fantastic. The question is, where do we go next? The Benelux, if we want to piss off the resistance more, because they're already struggling a little bit, that's a question, whether or not we risk hitting them. They're currently at 90 out of 99 MC. They could take the hit, and in terms of relation, they're actually tolerant with us because of all of our gifts. So they wouldn't lose much if we stripped them of the Benelux. That might be an idea. What they really need is more resources, but right now I'm stuck in an expansion phase for my space economy. I don't need to give them any bases, so I'm considering starting to relocate my armies towards the Benelux for potential incorporation into the Eurasian Union. That's definitely an option. I'm also researching independence movements, and from there I can get end of empires. That plus the greater North America tech gives us options to start expanding both the US and the UK, which would be a nice way to start cleaning some of this up. The other question is, do I at any point try and absorb the European Union? It's 3 out of 5 controlled by Exodus. I don't like the initiative, but this would hit Exodus quite significantly. The question is, given I'm about to go to war with the aliens, do I try and bribe Exodus enough to make up for the fact that they lose the European Union, despite the fact that that will probably kick them well into the negative on mission control and lead to many of their stations defecting? They're currently getting 3/5 of 34, so they're doing okay. There are 5 control points, so they're doing 7, 740, 21 mission control for themselves. That would be really handy to absorb into the Eurasian Union, to be perfectly honest. And now that the European Union is a flawed democracy, it actually makes sense to absorb with the Eurasian Union. The military tech level would benefit if the EU absorbed the other way, but the Eurasian Union's democratic enough that absorbing the EU is actually not that bad an idea. So I'm seriously considering, once the army absorbs the Benelux, potentially absorbing the EU and bringing it into the Eurasian Union. The only thing is that then prevents, with the EU no longer independent, that would prevent us later absorbing the restored Commonwealth and creating a super EU conglomeration. So please do leave some comments on that. How that would work is we would restore the Commonwealth, absorb the UK, and then absorb the EU and the Eurasian Union together. But that's going to take much longer. So your thoughts are more than welcome. Alright, the volatile situation is starting to stabilize somewhat at plus 663 and plus 1k water. All of the metals income in particular, and volatiles too, is depressed by the fact that we have some mines upgrading, but we're in a better position. We're at 250 utilized MC. I think 260 is the cap with this patch roughly, although that's really riding the edge. The US Army is arriving in Europe, and Max is getting ready to go into the Benelux. Should be good. We're currently researching the Zeta Helian drive, which I'll show off in a moment, inertial confinement fusion reactor 1 because it's a good investment, and we're getting our coil guns online. Fall of Empire should be available on the 7th. This is because you need to research the end of America in order to get the restored Commonwealth. That doesn't mean we're going to end America. We're in fact still going to do the massive American expansion technology, which will open up Mexico and a number of these states to referenda to join the United States. I just need to check it's not going to destroy my beautiful, beautiful mill tech before I do so. America cannot sacrifice its military technology for anything. I know that absorbing Mexico's 154 million people, and then the various populations of places like Guatemala and Belize and whatnot, could be great to assist America in growing ever more powerful, especially given its overall great statistics. We could then obviously apply those education standards elsewhere and get even more research and more economic power. But for the moment, America is content just being America, and if I expand it, I don't want it to be at the expense of what has made it great: its immense military, economic, and scientific power. Plus, you'll notice that more and more US states are completing their space defense systems. This slight delay, because of the patch and needing to get coil guns and all that, is giving us time to get more defenses online. Chicago now has a defense station. Washington has a defense station, and basically all of California is now defended by the Los Angeles Space Defense Complex. So the situation in terms of safety for our ground facilities is improving. The United Kingdom, in fact, will finish its final installation in probably a couple of months, at which point it will be in a good position to do basically anything else. Probably invest in the economy until it's time to start absorbing some of the old Commonwealth, at which point we can start singing Rule Britannia. The army is not incredibly modern, but I don't see a reason to go to 100% mil-tech investment while the Americans are still around to be useful, although we could consider upgrading the UK to maybe Tech Standard 5.0, because those 3 armies are still worth something. Alright, so we've just done some drive research, so let me just do a little illustration for you. I've just rigged up a battleship that would mount 6-point defense phaser turrets and a nose-mounted 480cm ultraviolet phaser cannon. This is basically a PD boat. We can do some more things with this, but mostly I'm just here to illustrate the drives for a moment. So this gives you a cruise acceleration of 17.3 millig's, a combat acceleration of 700 millig's, and a cruise delta V of 10. This is the advanced pulsar and the solid core fission engine. Now this is going to struggle to provide the power for all these laser systems, but that's beside the point. Let's ditch the engine and switch over to something new. This is a flow-stabilized Z-pinch fusion reactor. It's 99.5% efficient, it's incredibly light per gigawatt of output, its maximum output is 300 terawatts, and the main extra point here is that it requires some exotic materials to make work. We cannot make this technology work without alien technology, but hey, it is what it is. Now let's look at 2 of the drive options. The Triton Pulse I showed you before. This gives you more cruise acceleration, less combat acceleration, but the cruise delta V is now 67 kps. That's getting serious, and is 6 times what the advanced pulsar can give you. But we can now do better. As long as we're willing to invest, we can now produce this thing. This is the Zeta Helian drive, or Zeta Helian drive. With 6 thrusters, this gives us a cruise acceleration of 24.6, which is slower, but 813 kps range and 1.5 Gs of combat acceleration with 17 propellant tanks, so we can of course cut that down. But we're not done. This thing is hydrogen powered, which means we can use both the bonus, the muon spiker, which gives you a bonus to propellant as long as you're using a fusion engine to give us more thrust and acceleration, and then also, where is my 50%? If you're using hydrogen as a propellant, which I believe we are, we can now mount a hydron trap. We've now increased the combat acceleration to 1.9 Gs, the cruise delta V to 990 kps, and the cruise acceleration is a respectable 32. This is now a pretty fast ship. Now, eventually we'll get alien compatible ECM, which will probably mount, but for the moment you can throw 2 advanced laser engines on this thing. Laser engines boost all laser weapon power by 10 megajoules. A defensive phaser, I believe, is by default 50. And the megajoulage affects both the range and the damage. So 2 laser engines are going to give a near 50% bonus to the range and damage of these point defense laser turrets. Significantly, this ship can now do 2 Gs of combat acceleration, which is incredible, and at 973 kps, which we can cut down even further to be honest, it can now out delta V alien fleets, which means that if you intercept a fleet and it decides to bid delta V to run, this ship can actually win the delta V race and catch them. This is a truly interplanetary warship. This is a ship that is capable of intercepting alien fleets, catching them, killing them, and then still getting home to refuel. This is closer to the sort of ship that we're going to be building. Once we finish just a little more technology, what I'm probably going to do is get the resources to start building a couple of battleship hulls or a couple of cruiser hulls, incorporating many of these new technologies that we're researching. I'm going to get them started in our shipyards around Earth or Mercury, and then when they're almost complete, I'm going to shut the shipyards down so they don't actually take mission control. At 100 water, 378 volatiles, 200 metals, 63 nobles, this is a very cheap ship. It's just a PD boat. It doesn't have much in the way of offensive power, but it's incredibly long-ranged and very fast. All you need to do to turn this into an offensive weapon system is to go to the hull weapon system, and we're still researching coils. But if you want to turn this into quite a deadly space combat ship, is mount a 360 centimeter ultraviolet phaser array, and all of a sudden you've got a very high damage, long range weapon system as well. You could then mount some 60 centimeter guns, because these are dual purpose. They can do PD or they can do additional damage to ships, or you can mount PD or any combination thereof. The nose gun, meanwhile, is going to have the longest range. It's going to be effective at 900 kilometers, doing 12.5 damage every 10 seconds. This thing's going to do 11.3 damage every 10 seconds, but it's going to be a little more effective against armor and engage at a little bit closer range. But either way, this is a powerful laser boat. Backing it up with these smaller guns makes sense if you want to make a damage boat. Alternatively, we can mount coils, and if we want to make an orbital bombardment ship, which is a serious possibility, green phaser batteries can bombard through atmosphere because the beam does not attenuate the same way ultraviolet batteries do. Plus, this doesn't count exotic materials, so it's not as good in space combat. But if we wanted to start bombarding people on Earth, getting at least one ship mounting a green phaser battery or some coil guns is an option. But in any case, this is the Zeta Helian drive, and this, coupled with the Z-pinch flow stabilized reactor, means that we are now in the space combat game. And here's more of Banerjee being a bit of a downer on humanity at the same time that we finish clean energy. Clean energy doesn't really give us any military technology, but it decarbonizes 50% of the economy priority and increases the speed at which welfare removes methane and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. In other words, we have now 50% solved global warming, or at least the things that are speeding it up. In terms of things that we're going to pick up now, mind and machine might be good, advanced missile warfare doctrine would be good, picking up antimatter containment would also be good. I think I'm going to pick up antimatter because we're going to want it eventually, although mind and machine for cyborging and training simulation, transform phages, all of this is kind of useful. And nukes. It would be good to have nukes. I'm going to pick up Advanced Missile Warfare Doctrine, I think, for the moment, in the low priority spot. Integrated Earth Space Economy is also about to finish, as is improved shipbuilding, and the armies are moving into the Benelux. And with that, the Benelux is absorbed, and we are up to 277 mission control, plus a whole bunch in construction. I'm starting to feel better about things, at least in terms of MC. Note that when I say I'm feeling better about things, I mean I'm making progress. I know I'm ahead of curve of where most players will be at this stage of the game. I'm facing some resource constraints, but that's about it. My research is incredible, my MC position is solid, and I'm in a position now to expand my expand my position yet further. Restoring the Commonwealth will be a great benefit for the United Kingdom. Expanding America down south also gives us the chance to swallow up more potential CPs and reduce the area of influence for the aliens. I am about to face some retribution, so I'm going to have to launch some distraction stations because Max is about to blow up a base. But I'm getting very, very close to the war that I promised last episode. It's just that this ability to increase my MC and unstick my economy, and also the need to get coil guns before my stations can actually defend themselves, has led to you getting this one extra episode of defensive infrastructure, technology research, and expansion. I'm probably going to play one more turn, then I'm going to see what warships I can design with the technology I have now, and how many I can get started at Space Adelaide for when the conflict begins. They won't be able to defeat the alien Doom fleet, but they might be able to go pinch off some smaller ones, and they do have the Delta V, impressively, to evade the alien mothership fleet if they need to, and that's going to be what I rely on early on. A hunter-killer team of highly mobile battleships pinching off smaller targets and trying to lead the mothership fleets, the dangerous fleets, on a bit of a wild goose chase. That's the plan anyway. Now here's a ship that I'm considering putting a pair of into production immediately. I'd need to buy a few more volatiles or wait a couple of days, but this is a ship, the Melbourne class battleship. It's essentially a laser boat. The idea here is I've designed something that's intended for long-term independent operation. With 17 propellant tanks, it's got 1.1 thousand kps, a combat acceleration of 1.2 Gs, and a cruise acceleration of 19.9. So it's not super quick to burn on the strategic map, but it's got a lot of range and an entirely laser-based armament. 2-point defense laser turrets for point defense boosted by these advanced laser engines, a front-mounted 480cm phaser cannon in the ultraviolet range, 80 forward armor adamantane, 5 side armor adamantane, 5 rear armor adamantane. This does give it a bit of a significant cost, but we can produce this thing in, I think, 138 days, and I think if we get a pair of them, they could go hunt enemy surveillance vessels and light ships, they could range out, and if they're attacked by an alien doom fleet, they're actually going to have the Delta V to evade and run to another shipyard, or at least that's the theory. Melbourne class as an independent raider is a decent start. It's not a fleet boat, but it should be good enough for the purpose I have in mind, which is keeping the aliens busy. My big concern here is the cruise acceleration, 19.9, and the huge weight. The weight is driven by the fact that there's 2.2 thousand tons of radiator on this thing, as well as 2,600 front armor, as well as 2,638 tons of side armor, and the same amount on the front. That's how much lateral armor costs. But I'm going to save the design, and unless people have great objections in the comments, I actually think I'm going to build the thing. Ship construction, Space Adelaide. I don't need any of this stuff at the moment. What I need is a Melbourne class, wherever it may be. Did that get saved as a Demos rather than a... One second. Ship classes. No. That's the Melbourne class. And now I can't save the design. Alright, if I take one side armor point off it, I can save the design as the Melbourne, hopefully. There we are, Melbourne class battleship, fantastic. Ship construction, Melbourne class battleship, Space Adelaide, add one to queue. Alright, so with 2 Melbourne class deep space raiders, about 3 months away from construction, I feel like this is a good place to cut the episode. I appreciate the fact that I said we were going to war last episode, so thank you for giving me one extra episode in order to get my economy sorted and to build up. Next turn, as soon as the Melbournes finish, we're going to start using them to pick apart the alien surveillance fleets and try and lead their mega fleet on a bit of a runabout, while continuing to bust past the 250 MC cap and start continuing to expand our economy. In particular, the target is going to be expanding mine output powered by ground-based MC, and then slowly getting a fleet online that can actually fight alien battle fleets rather than picking on individual ships the way the Melbournes will. We're researching the advanced coil guns now. These will give our station something to fire back, so by the 5th of June, which is well within goal, our battle station should finally be at full capacity. And as you can see, the economy is low on resources, particularly volatiles, but it is stabilizing. In terms of geopolitics, the question's in front of us. Do we absorb the European Union? And I haven't seen the End of America technology pop yet, which is kind of annoying me. Let's just check whether I'm missing something, because I do need that in order to get restored Commonwealth. Because the question will be, does Canada get absorbed into the United States, or does Canada get absorbed back into the UK along with the rest of the Commonwealth? So is there anything here that prevents End of America being researched? It shouldn't. We've got Fall of Empires. We were the biggest contributor. So the only thing stopping End of America from popping up is my bad luck. Take one last look just to make sure it's not here. End of China is here. These are the 5,000. Okay, so we're just going to have to wait for it to appear. But if we do, we'll research End of America, even though we have no intention of ending America. We can get restored Commonwealth, and then maybe we expand with the UK into South Africa, Australia, both of which are controlled by servants or protectorate, because here's the other advantage of going to war. Once we can, I can start openly striking against servant councillors. At the moment, Max can assassinate at command 25. Tomi can assassinate at command 25. And, quietly upgrading the background, Vincinar is at command 25. It wouldn't be too hard to get him to... he's at command 20. It wouldn't be too hard to get him to 25. Give him an org that allows assassinate, and we can go splat 3 servant councillors per turn. That's my plan to finally suppress the bastards. So there we are. One last turn of preparation, complete. battleships in construction, designs for others being worked on, economies stabilised, and geopolitics held in the palm of our hands. We're going to piss some people off doing this. It's going to take a lot of bribery to keep Exodus on side, and we did neuter the resistance a little bit this episode, although overall they still like us. But in the end, I think it's for the best. More resources under our control that we can readily defend, both against bombardment and against servants and protectorate. More territory that we can squeeze out of their potential zones of control, because the goal is going to be, ultimately, to neutralise the factions almost entirely. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you're looking forward to it kicking off, this time for real, next episode.